Hello everyone, my name is Raxef, and World of Warcraft Patch 8.3 Visions of N'Zoth has been announced, and with it came an update to the PTR. There's a lot to cover in this patch and a lot that I'm looking forward to, but today I'm going to give my first impressions on the content that was initially released. N'Zoth's invasions upon Azeroth in the forms of assaults and horrific visions, as well as some of the updates to gear. Let's start off with assaults, which in my opinion is the least interesting of the two invasion types. Similar to the Burning Legion's assaults throughout the various zones in the Broken Isles, the armies of N'Zoth are invading Azeroth in a very similar manner. It's our job to head to the locations of these assaults and drive the encroaching forces back. I first made my way to Pandaria, where the newly restored Vale of Eternal Blossoms was waiting. Before I even get into the gameplay, I just need to say that it's great to see Blizzard investing the time in updating older areas. This is a trend that I hope they continue, particularly in places like Silvermoon City that have been neglected for quite some time. Now, as I said before, these are really just like the assaults we had back in Legion, which, when broken down, are no more than glorified world quests, unfortunately. There are a couple of daily quests that you can pick up that are related to the assaults, which you can then complete as you repel the invasion force. Completing the assault is as easy as defeating enemies around the area and clicking on various interactable items. To be honest, I didn't really find myself being too engaged as I fought through Pandaria, and the reward hardly seemed worth the time invested. Clearing through wave after wave of Mogu just felt too repetitive for my taste, and the world boss type enemies didn't really do much to improve the experience. Uldum felt slightly better, as at least the enemies you face look and feel a bit different, but to be honest, I couldn't bring myself to even finish the assault there. It did have one interesting feature though, which was a lesser version of a horrific vision. While in Uldum, I entered a portal which transported me back to an alternate version of the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, where I had to fight minions of N'Zoth while dealing with the insanity mechanic. I thought it was a bit weird to have a portal in Uldum transport you to Pandaria, when Pandaria itself is a place that N'Zoth is already invading, but I digress. Overall, I don't think too many people will be happy doing these over and over again, outside of needing to grind as much as possible to level up their legendary cloaks and maybe gearing alts. Blizzard may add additional rewards in the future, and I certainly hope they do. It would be a shame, really, to have us revisit these old zones, only to make us go through endless amounts of world quests, though I can see the appeal to maybe a more casual type of player, as this kind of content means that there's always something that you can do with more limited time on your hands in the game. If I'm honest, these assaults really just felt like tamer versions of island expeditions where you're simply focused on filling up some type of bar by destroying enemies, and then you get some kind of reward at the end. I would love to have seen Blizzard implement unique mechanics around the assaults, like maybe letting players align themselves with the forces of N'Zoth in war mode so that you're fighting perhaps other players. At the very least, if Blizzard is going to be heavily reusing different types of gameplay, I wouldn't mind seeing them experiment slightly with it. Now, the second type of content that I'm really excited for are the horrific visions. At the moment, we currently enter a corrupted version of Orgrimmar and Stormwind. We do this by grinding a material called Coalescing Visions, which is earned by completing various world quest type content like the assaults I mentioned earlier. We then combine these to make a single horrific vision, which acts as a sort of key. Upon entering N'Zoth's vision of Orgrimmar or Stormwind, we learn that our main goal is to defeat a corrupted version of a faction leader. For Orgrimmar, it's Thrall; for Stormwind, it's Illyria. Completing this goal earns us various rewards, which helps us upgrade our legendary cloak and advance our Titanic Research Archive, which is a system of sorts that subsequently then helps us progress more and more into the horrific visions. I was able to clear both visions fairly easily, but that's because I was able to fully upgrade my cloak and completely unlock the research archive on the PTR. Blizzard's intention is to make these gauntlets repeatable, getting further and further each time as you gather rewards and boost your stats. The horrific visions can also be done solo or in a group, meaning if you enjoy the personal challenge, you can take them on in a similar method akin to the mage towers from Legion. Personally, I love the feel and look of the horrific visions. Going through the corrupted versions of Orgrimmar and Stormwind felt interesting, as you could see how exactly N'Zoth could twist the minds of innocent citizens to perform unspeakable acts. It shows a much darker side of the game that I personally think Blizzard should explore more of, but I would understand if they decided to really just kind of leave it here at these particular visions. Mechanics-wise, upon entering the vision, you're given a sanity bar, which drains over time. This is the primary hindrance in your attempt to complete these scenarios. However, as I said previously, as you progress in your cloak and your Titan research, you'll be able to manage your sanity better and better. Eventually, you'll be able to spend large amounts of time within these visions, fulfilling side objectives which grant you even more rewards after you complete the main goal. Each of these side objectives introduces a new mechanic that further drains your insanity. One of my favorite mechanics was one where you're constantly being stalked by a shadowy version of yourself. It added just a little bit extra feeling of suspense to the creepy atmosphere. Currently, the rewards you get from completing their horrific visions seem very insular. What I mean by that is that you're rewarded various currencies and items, which then upgrade your cloak and the Titanic research, which then in turn allows you to progress further and further into the visions and gather more currencies and items and etc. etc. It just kind of proceeds this type of cycle. It's not terribly apparent if there are any rewards outside this cycle, although one of the items you can earn is spent on high item level bind on pickup gear. I think this particular type of content would be perfect for attaching things like cosmetics, mounts, pets, pretty much anything, as it is a grindable type of content that can be done solo or in a group. If the rewards are right, I can see a lot of people enjoying horrific visions. One thing that did catch my eye was the room that you enter before heading into the horrific vision. In each room, there were these circles of masks that it seemed like you could earn or find or unlock. Clicking on them brings up a very cryptic hint as to their location within the horrific vision. Once you find the mask, you can actually activate them to trigger various debuffs or affixes in the horrific visions, which I assume will grant you greater rewards upon completion. As I mentioned, I wasn't able to find any of these masks and use them myself. Overall, I think Horrific Visions have the potential to be a great addition to Battle for Azeroth, where so much of the content either provides little reward like world quests or relies heavily on large amounts of group play like Mythic Plus dungeons and island expeditions. I do have two fears though, the first of which is all of the new currencies and items being introduced. When we got to Nazjatar, we really only had to worry about one new currency, which was the pearls. For this upcoming patch, there are at least 3 or 4 different types of currencies and items that you need to keep track of. And while it's not something that's a huge issue, it was something that I noticed that may be confusing for people. Secondly, it seems like the Horrific Visions are going to be mandatory in order to level up your legendary cloak. And as much fun as I had doing them a couple of times, the prospect of grinding them over and over and over again is frustrating. I'd rather Blizzard make this content optional, providing a variety of different methods to leveling your cloak rather than just the one. I know I'm not the only person who feels this way, so I do hope that Blizzard considers the feedback carefully that they are getting. Outside of the assaults and horrific visions, there were a couple of other topics surrounding patch 8.3 that I wanted to discuss. First and foremost are the corrupted rings that have appeared. Each of these rings comes with a kiss curse effect, meaning that you get both a positive and a negative with it. The positive effect across the board is a 2% increase in damage and healing done, while the negative effects range from ignoring healing for a period of time if you're overhealed, to rooting you for a few seconds if you get a killing blow, to potentially even getting feared if you're not facing in a certain direction. I love the fact that Blizzard is putting this type of gear in the game, and while obviously some of the rings will be better than others, it will still add a small aspect that changes how you play. Ultimately, I hope Blizzard continues to make efforts to implement items like these, and I think that the presence of old gods really opens up possibilities for this to happen. One of these possibilities might even be the Titan forging changes that were hinted at in the announcement. Perhaps we're going to be seeing a twist where maybe we get pieces of gear that have a chance to come with these kiss curse effects, these positives and negatives, or maybe we'll have the opportunity to collect resources from the horrific visions and then turn those into some sort of corrupted reforging for our current gear. I know that Titan forging isn't everyone's favorite thing, so I'm excited to see Blizzard is at least experimenting with the system, and hopefully it leads to a positive response. Secondly, I want to talk about this legendary cloak that we're getting. As you probably know, Wrathion was involved with the legendary cloak questline back in Mists of Pandaria. This time around, he's bringing us yet another cloak which will help us combat N'Zoth's influence. Now, I get why it makes sense for him to give us a cloak, that sort of seems to be his thing. However, I would really like to see Blizzard find an alternate solution than just handing the players legendaries. The effect that this cloak provides us doesn't really feel that legendary, and could easily have been transferred over to any other piece of gear, like our current Heart of Azeroth neckpiece. In fact, I think it might have been a decent idea to incorporate vision-specific armor sets into the game that specifically play into this new type of sanity-based content. While I'm glad that Blizzard hasn't forgotten about the oranges, I don't think that this was the best implementation of one. Now, this might just be WoW Classic rubbing off on me, but I'd love to see Blizzard try to at least attempt a return to traditional legendary items, where you need to complete either a lengthy yet interesting quest line and gather exceedingly rare items in order to craft or create your legendary piece of gear. I just don't think it would be the worst thing for the game if only a handful of people on each server had a legendary item, but I guess we'll just need to see what the future holds. And that's going to wrap it for this video. I know that I didn't get to everything like the auction house redesign or the new essences, and I think I'm probably going to be saving those for future videos when I get a chance to test them out even more. But ultimately, I want to know, what do you think of the patch 8.3 announcements? Have you gotten a chance to play any of the content yet on the PTR? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you like this video and you want to support my channel, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.